a mysterious ad selling the giant eggs of a mythical beast, multiple reports of an airplane-sized bird, an artist/warlock possessed by an alien consciousness. It was a strange time in the Magic City. Today on American Strangeness, an airplane-sized bird and rock eggs in 1961 Miami. As January 1961 came to a close in Florida, isolated reports of an enormous bird the size of a small airplane filtered into the Miami Herald newspaper. It was part of a convoluted saga involving newspaper ads selling giant rock eggs, a quirky artist who suggested he was inhabited by an alien passenger, and the Magic City's hunt for a monster to call its own. The sightings began on Friday, January 27th, and continued on through the following Monday. A young woman visiting from New Jersey spotted a bird that looked like a big vulture with a wingspread about 55 feet near the 40-mile bend on Tamiami Trail. Eric Harnew, a resident of El Portal Village in Miami, said the wingspan of the bird he saw at local Matheson Hammock Park surpassed the 7-foot spread seen on the area's largest birds, the brown pelican, bald eagle, and man-of-war bird. Bigger than I have ever seen before, he told the Herald. It was flapping these huge wings and making a kind of rushing sound. 2 fishermen who docked in Miami told the local Audubon Society that they had encountered a similar big bird 70 miles south at Sand Key. Audubon Society employee Jack Best said he was expecting delivery of photos the fishermen claimed to have taken of the creature. It does not appear, at least that I found yet, that these photos were ever published, so they could represent a case of lost media and very rare photographic evidence of abnormally giant birds. Other reports from unknown sources placed big birds in Coconut Grove and Snapper Creek, where one woman allegedly went into hysterics. Herald staff writer John Morton reported the story with dry humor, calling the creature a snowbird, which is a pejorative Floridians use to refer to part-time residents who flock there during the winter, and stating, "Somebody's giving us the bird, king size." Morton apparently visited Matheson Hammock, Coconut Grove, and Snapper Creek on January 30th, the day before publishing his story, but found the area, quote, bereft of large avians. He reported there were a few pelicans, terns, cranes, etc. around, but nothing the cat couldn't handle. Morton wrote that some people believed the whole thing was a prank, instigated by a recent effort to bestow Miami with its own local monster as a tourism draw. Indeed, John Kiesler, a columnist with rival paper The Miami News, had penned an appeal just days earlier on January 23rd titled, "Monster Lovers of Miami, Unite!" Inspired by climber Sir Edmund Hillary's recent failed quest to locate a Yeti in the Himalayas, Kiesler wrote that this would be a fine psychological time for the Miami area to leap into the breach with its own resident monster. We get a good monster going in South Florida and the advantages are obvious. Among these advantages, it will stimulate tourist trade, as the Loch Ness cash registers will testify, and would give city editors some place to send reporters on dull days. Kiesler renewed his appeal for monster sightings in his January 27th column. On February 6th, Kiesler provided an update on the campaign's success. This column, which alerted the public to a crying need for a local monster, is proud to report that to date we have accomplished, or feel we have, reports of monster footprints, a monster in the Jewfish Creek area, one in Lake Surprise, a 14-foot anaconda, duly documented hysteria concerning birds with 50-foot wingspreads flitting about, a phone call from a man who asserts they are from rock eggs he put out some time ago, the report of a sea serpent in Biscayne Bay, and a man who called to say he saw something funny out of the corner of his eye near Opelika. Starting on January 19, 1961, and continuing through April, An enigmatic classified ad appeared in the Miami Herald and the Miami News. Rock eggs, 600 per dozen, Vanderkar. As time went on, the price for rock eggs only increased, topping off at $3,000 per dozen. At one point in February, the ad proclaimed a rock egg was ready to hatch, witnesses welcome. The rock, or rook, is a legendary monster bird that nested on a verdant yet uninhabited island and was encountered by Sinbad the Sailor during his second and fifth voyages. As described in 1001 Nights, Sinbad at first mistook the rook for a cloud, the enormous bird possessing gigantic girth and being inordinately wide of wing, which, as it flew through the air, veiled the sun and hid it from the island. The rook was known to pluck elephants from the ground, fly them back over the sea, and feed the unfortunate pachyderms to its young. When Sinbad encountered a huge white dome rising high in the air at the center of the island, he came to realize it was one of the rook's eggs, and measured its circumference at 50 paces. In a passage from the fifth voyage of Sinbad, ignoring Sinbad the Sailor's warnings, his passengers set upon and broke apart the giant egg of the rook, when behold, the day grew dark and dun, and the sun was hidden from us, as if some great cloud had passed over the firmament. So we raised our eyes and saw what we took for a cloud was the rook, poised between us and the sun, and it was his wings that darkened the day. When he came and saw his egg broken, he cried a loud cry, whereupon his mate came up, and they both began circling about the ship, crying out at us with voices louder than thunder. Sinbad, his crew and passengers hurriedly cast off from the deserted island. The rooks gave chase, each carrying in its talons a huge boulder it had snatched from the mountains. The captain spun the ship around as the male rook dropped his boulder. It missed the vessel, but plunged into the waves with such violence that the ship pitched high and then sank into the trough of the sea, and the bottom of the ocean appeared to us. Then the female rook dropped her boulder, which was even larger than the first. It fell on the poop of the ship and crushed it, the rudder flying into 20 pieces, whereupon the vessel foundered and all and everything on board were cast into the main. Sinbad struggled to survive, grabbing onto one of the broken planks of the ship as it floated away. One hypothesis suggesting a factual basis for the rook is that Arab traders voyaging down the east coast of Africa heard tales from the people of Madagascar of the 10-foot-tall, flightless elephant birds that were native to their island. Believed to have gone extinct around the year 1000, elephant birds likely persisted in folk memory. Travelers also encountered fossilized remains of their eggs, which could grow to 16 inches in length, nearly 10 inches in width, and hold a volume of over 3 gallons. A colloquialism in the early 20th century was to describe something uncommon and extraordinary as being as rare as a rock's egg. Dr. Carl Schuker proposed another extinct avian species from Madagascar as a candidate for the rook's inspiration, one that actually could fly. Undiscovered until 1994, the Madagascan crowned eagle is believed to have died out around the year 1500. This rainforest raptor is thought to have been similar in size to the African crowned eagle, which can have a wingspan surpassing 6 feet. Madagascan crowned eagle might have preyed upon the similarly extinct giant lemur and possibly the elephant bird itself. Recounting his travels during the late 13th century, Marco Polo described, as recorded by Ruticello da Pisa, the people of the island, Madagascar, report that at a certain season of the year, an extraordinary kind of bird, which they call a rook, makes its appearance from the southern region. In form it is said to resemble the eagle, but it is incomparably greater in size, being so large and strong as to seize an elephant with its talons and to lift it into the air, from whence it lets it fall to the ground in order that when dead it may prey upon the carcass. Persons who have seen the bird assert that when the wings are spread they measure 16 paces in extent, from point to point, and that the feathers are 8 paces in length and thick in proportion. Messer Marco Polo, conceiving that these creatures might be griffins, such as are represented in paintings, half birds and half lions, particularly questioned those who reported their having seen them as to this point. But they maintain that their shape was altogether that of birds, as it might be said, of the eagle. The Grand Khan, having heard this extraordinary relation, sent messengers to the island on the pretext of demanding the release of one of his servants who had been detained there, but in reality to examine into the circumstances of the country and the truth of the wonderful things told of it. When they returned to the presence of his majesty, they brought with them, as I have heard, a feather of the ruck, positively affirmed to have measured 90 spans, and the quill part to have been 2 palms in circumference. Polo appears not to have visited Madagascar, but to have recorded information conveyed by Arab navigators who had traveled along the southern coast of Africa. According to the 1908 edition of the Travels of Marco Polo the Venetian, edited by Ernest Rhys, all who have read the stories of the 1001 Nights must be acquainted with the size and powers of this extraordinary bird. They are called the roc, but its celebrity is not confined to that work. Ruck, says the Arabic and Persian dictionary, is the name of a monstrous bird, which is said to have power sufficient to carry off a live rhinoceros. Its existence seems, indeed, to have been universally credited in the East, and those Arabian navigators with whom our author conversed would not hesitate to attest a fact of such notoriety, but they might find it convenient, at the same time, to lay the scene of its appearance at a place so little frequented as the southern extremity of Madagascar, because the chances were small of any contradiction from local knowledge. The circumstance, however, of it resorting thither from the Southern Ocean gives room to a conjecture that the tale, although exaggerated, may not be altogether imaginary, and that it may have taken its rise from the occasional sight of a real bird of vast, although not miraculous, dimensions. If the passage of the text are intended for the ordinary steps of 2 feet and a half, the measure given to the wings of the roc would be 40 feet. Schuker wrote that during the Crusades, traders in the Middle East would sell European souvenir roc feathers to take back home. Naturalists would ultimately identify these supposed feathers as leaves of the raffia palm tree and related species. They resembled feathers, could surpass 3 feet in length, and were razor sharp. The roc eggs for sale in 1961 Miami were advertised by Louis van der Kar, local painter, sculptor, and self-described warlock. The eccentric and enigmatic artist's home and studio was located at the corner of 18th Street and Northeast 4th Avenue in Miami. Van der Kar called the house's wall spanning half a block on Northeast 4th Avenue his Wall of the World, decorated with the sculpted visages of history's gods, heroes, and monsters. Visitors filed into Van der Kar's workshop at all hours of the night, welcomed by the artist to sit and share philosophical conversation in his reputedly haunted studio. Guests were drawn into the magic of Van der Kar's storytelling, mystified, for example, by his insinuation that he was possessed by an extraterrestrial named Jeb at the moment a German U-boat torpedoed his U.S. merchant marine ship and he was tossed overboard into the English Channel during World War II. As Van der Kar told it, Jeb belonged to a race called the Atarians from a homing star called Meteorus on the other side of the galaxy. The Atarian people only understood reason and science. They had dismissed human beings as simpletons until discovering and puzzling over sculptures and paintings in a burned-out European church during the war. Jeb wanted to understand what made the human mind tick, what accounted for its seemingly contradictory ability to fashion great art, and then destroy it. The seaman was a high school dropout and a, quote, ignorant lout until he merged with Jeb, after which he rose to the top supervisor position at an aircraft plant and finally gave it all up to become an artist. Van der Kar would only play coy when asked if he was Jeb. He also claimed to possess ESP and the power to levitate, and he founded the Royal Order of Warlocks and Witches. Van der Kar, originally from Detroit, worked as an animator drawing Popeye cartoons for Fleischer Studios in Miami during the late 1930s. He served in the Navy during the Great Depression to support his family, and enlisted in the U.S. Merchant Marine during World War II. Van der Kar worked as an aircraft engineer before returning to Miami. There, he toiled in construction and operating a plumbing shop before realizing he could make a living selling his often abstract and dreamlike art. Among his paying gigs was the construction of displays for amusement parks, such as mountains, a gorilla's lair, and a 100-foot-long dragon. People called Vanderkar by turns crazy and a genius. I'm both, Vanderkar would reply. I think us geniuses should be modest. Many people think a roc is a mythological bird, but it's not. It's a bird with a 55-foot wingspread and it's 26 feet tall, said Vanderkar. He claimed to have made 4 rock eggs out of, well, rock, and impregnated them with a secret ancient formula to give life to the mythical birds. The artist said he hid them in a secret area of Miami in 1960, and 1 year later they were ready to hatch. Once each bird emerges, he explained, it eats the eggshell and raises an aura around itself to make it invisible to anyone but intelligent, imaginative people. The apex of Vanderkar's advertising campaign arrived when he arranged a gathering of 125 members of the Royal Rock Watching Society, Miami chapter, at Crandon Park Beach to observe one of the birds hatch from its massive egg on the night of Saturday, February 11th, 1961. Rocks bring peace and prosperity, said the artist. I hope this rock that hatches Saturday night sticks around Miami. You just watch business pick up if it does. While it's unclear if anyone actually witnessed the blessed event, the crowd enjoyed a large beach party complete with beer, hot dogs, and accordion players. The next day, Vanderkar revealed he was deluged with close to 50 calls from witnesses claiming they saw a rock flying around in the sunny Florida sky, including a boy who said his science teacher insisted the rock did not exist. I agreed, said Vanderkar. I explained the legend of the rock, and after I was finished, the boy still wanted to know what a rock's wingspread was. 8 years later, Vanderkar revealed the amusing truth behind his rock frivolity. Garbage had been piling up at his home and workshop, and he wasn't inclined to pay someone to haul it away. His brain then lit up with the idea to cover wads of trash in egg-shaped plaster, disguising it as art. He then placed the newspaper ads in a wild bid to unload the things, guaranteeing they would hatch in 1,000 years. The ad actually found a paying customer, and Vanderkar gleefully shipped the eggs off to her Chicago home. A photo of Vanderkar with one of his golden rock eggs showed it to be the size of a small boulder. In essence, Vanderkar was the modern-day incarnation of the clever Arab trader selling raffia palms. Vanderkar would go on to place a series of weird classified ads, soliciting items such as a swamp-colored UFO and a free cruise to the Bahamas, bring ore. The artist did enrage one customer when he sold him a used time machine and delivered a box containing an alarm clock. It was a time machine, Vanderkar pointed out. Vanderkar would ultimately allow a glimpse into his modus operandi, reflecting, there is a sense of the ridiculous that can be carried to such an extreme that it becomes beautiful. Take the time I predicted that a great extinct primitive bird was going to appear at midnight in the park. The newspapers exposed it as a hoax. Even so, at midnight, 150 people showed up in the park to see the bird. That was beauty. The Rock of Miami, as opposed to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, also of Miami, is a muddled mix of related events, most of them hilarious. Did Vanderkar start the short-lived rock craze with his cheeky advertisements for the beast's massive eggs? Or was it Kiesler's call for Miami's own monster, which was printed a few days later, but made no mention at first of the rock? Was Morton's article a few days after that a tongue-in-cheek response to Kiesler and Vanderkar? Or was the public actually seeing a massive bird? Had all this monster talk fueled mass hysteria or inspired pranksters? Alas, we may never know the answer to this age-old question. Which came first, the rock or the egg?